Right. Underneath all this dry. Like I said, I can't get the slide open up, but I'm gonna find a way to, you know.
That's all right. Let me go ahead and take the truck and I come back and get the name. Yeah, I sure can. Give me 1 minute. Let me put this in there.
Sounds great, thank you. Alright guys, so I just pulled in this handgun. This is crazy, we keep finding them. I'm going to keep this pointed in a safe direction. We're going to go ahead and call the police department and get them down here.
I guess I could just do this.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. I am live today at the Chippewa River District Library giving a talk on magnet fishing. I appreciate you guys coming. We're going to get started around 6 o'clock, so hang tight and it should be a good time.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day. You know, it could be, but because of the way serial numbers put on the seal, even if it's ground up, you can usually see it from the backside. Hey, Lieutenant Howard, this is Jason. I'm down at John Dingle Park. We're magnet fishing, and we pulled your handgun. Would you like to turn in? Sounds great. Thank you very much, sir. I'm good. How are you? Take care over here. We're doing the story of it.
Starting about 5 minutes.
TikTok.
What are you doing? They found a boat, a gun somewhere?
Yeah.
Who found it? I did. Wow. And 38? Yeah. I caught it with that. Where do you get lost? You got a shotgun. Oh, really? No, we just threw the shotgun in. We used the water and pulled out.
How did you feel when you did it?
Oh, good. I just hope this all because it doesn't look that true.
No, it doesn't.
But I hope he gets it in soft crunch.
Yeah, and also with all the controls.
Right.
The one here.
A lot of times,
Topic. We try to get a serial number.
Uh-huh.
Starting a serial number, but to get it safely, it's a little hard.
Right.
You're getting crud, rust, slug.
there's a lot of new products on the market.
Yeah, right. We got two that we Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not lying. No. I think we've met a couple times.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I got a gun. All right, guys. I'm gonna keep this safe. This is the second gun that's been pulled up today. Look at that. No magazine in it.
Probably a couple more in there. I think there's like 2 more guns out there.
I don't recognize it. Sorry, there's a siren going off. I am fishing. I am a magnet fisherman down at John Dingle Park, and I just pulled on that handle. I'm just calling to report that so I can get an officer down here and turn it in. I tell you guys once a week. It's like the 6th time in this past month and a half.
Oh, okay, what do we got?
I got this little gun over here. There's no magazine in it.
Okay. Oh.
Is day shift busier down here or night shift? Or is it about the same? Depending on what's going on.
During the day, you get a lot of the more accidents, neighborhood complaints. I'd rather do the rough calls. I gotta do the gun on call, stuff like that. I don't want to do petty stuff like that.
Just sticker.
You should have one handing out stickers. We got some nice day calls.
Yeah, hopefully we'll try in a little bit. Right off the bat, Jason pulls up a gun.
Wow. Those are the 3 bullets that just came out of that gun.
It's a 32.
Yeah.
There's bullets in there too. I took them out of the Any bullets in it or no? Yeah, right inside the back.
Yes, they must have been out of there. No, that should be here.
It's an old gun now. I don't think Harrington Richards still makes revolvers, do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bridge on the west side of the river.
West side.
Yes, I know. Sorry.
That's out there.
Yep. Yep. Actually, it was just in the second one. We issued the magnet fish off the bridge. And
They didn't have a problem with that?
no. He said just anything of historical value, make sure it goes to him. Anything
But
that
goes to him, that's it. Yeah. Don't take it.
goes to the DNR. But he said any guns obviously go to the freight police.
Oh, no, they go to the DNR. I stand with Waymark. They're on there, bring it back over here. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Hey, I missed the first one, got the first one. Okay, that's my line. Well, I gotta call it in anyway.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I'm just trying to get that scooter that's down there. Miss Bass got that.
all rusty.
Yep.
I should.
Yeah, the 2 books. They're the same.
Okay. And she claimed it after 6 months.
Yeah, I call
And I guess there's 2 new ones. They didn't even get into the book, and it was just published a couple of years ago.
Oh, crap. Well, no. I know. It is. I'm still sad I haven't gotten it. Yeah, we found 5 shotguns out here. Yeah.
I feel like
Did
it's
you get the memo?
No, it's not.
I got an email on it.
She's not
You
presenting.
can present it to me.
Yeah.
Attending.
You don't
You're
bring it
attending
on.
technically.
Yeah. No. Oh, I'm totally gonna have over. All over. You're gonna have like breaks in there and. Oh, yeah. No, I talked to Phil earlier. Because we found 5 shotguns, or excuse me, 5 shotguns left. Yeah. Here. There's all for Selkies. Like, for the jail, Selkies. River Rat, yeah.
We're gonna be getting started here shortly. She just went to review the final.
All right. Anything else? Oh, nice.
Yeah, look inside.
Welcome, everyone. This is Tanner, aka the Magnet Man.
Thank y'all for coming.
Yes, speaking tonight about magnet fishing. So I think we're all very intrigued to see what you brought tonight and teaching us on what we can do to clean up our local waterways as well. So thank you. Welcome, Tanner.
Thank you for having me, everybody, and I really appreciate you guys all coming. Today I'm going to start off by showing you guys a 5-minute video that's going to give you a little bit of an introduction to how I got into magnet fishing. And we're going to start with that, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into all of the equipment that I'm using, how I'm finding locations to search, and then some of my favorite finds as well. name is Tanner Torres. I'm a senior at Michigan State University studying film. And in the beginning of 2020, I discovered a hobby that I had never heard of, and it got me really excited. And it would go on to become like one of the biggest parts of my life.
Just found a handgun! Holy crap! Oh, dude!
So in 2020, I was watching a magnet fishing video on YouTube because the pandemic had just started, and one favorite thing to do is just watch a bunch of YouTube videos. So I was just scrolling and scrolling through videos, and this video had popped up where a guy was throwing a magnet into the river, and he had pulled out a grenade, and I thought it was the craziest thing. The cops had came, and I instantly knew that that was something that I wanted to do and take part in. And I think for like a solid 2 months after that, I was just binge watching everyone's videos. So as soon as I learned that that might be something that I would want to do and try, I hopped straight over to Amazon and I bought my own magnet fishing kit. Now, what comes in a magnet fishing kit is your magnet. It's usually a neodymium magnet, and they can be quite strong. The one that I'm currently using is a 3,800 pound magnet that can hold 3,800 pounds, which is absolutely insane when you think about it, but that's in like the most perfect condition. So I bought my first magnet fishing kit, and it arrived, and I lived in Cairo, Michigan. It's a little rural town in Michigan, and I went out to one of the only spots that there is to throw a magnet into a river where there's access, and I was finding all kinds of stuff, like screwdrivers and tools and a lot of fishing lures. I was getting really into it. And you know, the first day that I was there, I had decided that I was just going to record everything that I was doing, everything that I was finding, because who knows, maybe I could start my own channel and be creating content like how these people were. Welcome to episode 1 of the Michigan Magnet Man. I'm here in Cairo, Michigan today, located down by the Cairo River, the Cass River here. So that's how it all began. And since then, it has just continued to boom. I got a gun. Alright guys, I'm gonna keep this safe. This is the second gun that's been pulled up today. This is another little handgun. When I first started doing magnet fishing, I was finding some stuff, but I realized quickly that I wasn't gonna find the big ticket items that some of these other channels are finding. There was guys that were finding guns and, like I said, grenades and things like that every single video that they were posting, and that is what I wanted to find.
I mean, if you're going to clean up a river, you might as well do it this way. One of the more interesting ways to just get stuff out of the Detroit River, 2 men actually resorted to magnet fishing, and they found all kinds of hidden treasure.
June of 2020, I met Jason from the Motor City Magnet Fishers, who would go on to become one of my best friends. We met up with him in Detroit, my cousin and I, for the first time, and we had a blast magnet fishing in the Detroit area. This was an area that I hadn't never really spent a lot of time in, so I didn't know what to expect. All I knew is that he had found 5 guns prior to me meeting him, so I figured that this was probably one of the better steps to actually find some of those things that I really wanted to find. And little did I know that was going to take me to going on to finding, I'm at 31 firearms now, just from my travels. And even from that, I had met Jason and I traveled with him around the state. And I had also met Scuba Sonia, who is another content creator from New Jersey, and she's actually my girlfriend. We actually met through the magnet fishing community, and we have been traveling around everywhere, just magnet fishing all the way from California, so the West Coast over to New York City on the East Coast, and that has been one of the my greatest finds magnet fishing yet. A sense of community that I've met through the YouTube community and through the magnet fishing community, it's just unmatched to anything that I've been a part of. The only time that I've ever really had like camaraderie like that would have been when I was in the military, in the Navy, and I haven't found that since. And I think I found a part of myself in this community, and it has helped me grow to become a better person, as well as someone that is out here doing things that I can do for my community.
Number is 332-970.
YouTube in general has brought a lot of communities closer. I can only imagine all of the other communities, like the guitar community or the car community, they have similar bonds and they've met similar people. Like, I can tell you the name of every single person that makes YouTube videos magnet fishing in Michigan. I've met them all, we hang out, we're friends. like this community is so much bigger than magnet fishing, and it's so much bigger than I ever expected all of this to turn out.
Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction of who I am and how I got involved with magnet fishing. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you guys have heard of magnet fishing? Everybody? No? Oh man, this one. That's okay, we're gonna do this one. So, for those of you who have not heard of magnet fishing essentially is using a large neodymium magnet on a rope to throw it out into bodies of water in hopes of clearing trash out and finding cool items. Some of the things you guys can see up here. I'm going to start off by talking about some of the equipment that I use. Over the years, the equipment has changed quite a bit, and there's been a lot of advances when it comes to what types of magnets that we're using. So to start off, I'm going to tell you guys about the first magnet that ever came out, and that is a single-sided magnet. So this here is a 1,500-pound single-sided magnet from Brute Magnetics. The bottom side here is the most magnetic part of this, and it's not very magnetic on top. When these came out, it was great. This is the first generation of magnet really that came out for the magnet fishing community. And with these, it's really good for dropping down off of bridges and literally dropping right on top of things and just walking over. The issue with these magnets though, is that when you are pulling your rope back, if you're on the side of the shore or anything, your magnet's just getting stuck in the mud and flipping over. So you're not gonna find this much. Now, single-sided magnets like this, they start anywhere from $35 to $50, depending on what strength magnet you guys decide to go with. And they go all the way up to 3,800 pounds when it comes to this style.
What do they weigh?
So this magnet in particular weighs 5.3 pounds. So it's a little bit heavier than some of the newer ones that are stronger. So the older ones were heavier and they weren't as strong. The next style of magnet that came out after that was a double-sided magnet. So the main difference between this magnet and the first magnet is it's magnetic on both sides. So, for instance, this side's gonna pull stuff, and this side's gonna pull stuff. Now this magnet in particular is a lot smaller, and it's what I recommend for children who are getting started in magnet fishing. Right around anywhere from 500 to 750 pounds of pull force is right around the right spot for a child. I know that seems like it could be a lot, but when I'm talking about the strengths of these magnets, I mean in the most perfect condition. That's if this was completely clean, it had never touched any dirt, and it was on a brand new piece of metal where it was completely flat. You're not gonna get that type of strength. So when I say 5 to 750, this really can pick up something that's just a couple hundred pounds. So after these magnets, these were used for off of bridges and from shore. The best part about this was when you drag your magnet, the bottom of it is magnetic too. So not only are you just pulling through the mud, you're actually being able to grab onto things now. And I really like using these. Now, after these two came out, the next best thing was what is called a clamp magnet. This is called a clamp magnet. I know these are all very dirty, they're heavily used. This magnet is great in particular because both sides of this are super magnetic, and you get some magnetivity through this casing on here. This does limit the magnetivity of the magnet. So you're not going to be able to find as much stuff with the sides of your magnet, but here and here, you're going to be able to find so much more. I started off by using the double and single-sided magnets, and I wasn't finding more than fishing lures and bottle caps and nails. When I switched over to this style magnet is really when I started to find a lot more items in the water, simply because they were able to make a much stronger magnet that is a lot smaller than what the other magnets were. These magnets do come with a price though. Compared to the other magnets, these are anywhere from 4 to 5 times the price. Starting price on a clamp magnet like this is anywhere from $180 to $250, depending on what company you go with. These overall are one of the best magnets that you can get. There's only one that kind of tops it, but I would still highly recommend anyone who is looking to get into magnet fishing to at least get a clamp magnet style. The final style of magnet is called a 360-degree magnet. So this magnet is magnetic all the way around, on top, and on bottom. This is by far the best style of magnet It's heavier, it's about 5 pounds, which the other one was that you had asked about. So it's about the same weight. That other one had a pull force of 1,500 pounds. This one has a pull force of 3,800 pounds. So it's almost 3 times as strong as the first smaller magnets I was showing you guys. Now these can be used in any type of situation, whether you're fishing off of a bridge or fishing from the shore or a pier, because it's completely magnetic. Once I switched over to this, that is when I started finding everything. I was fishing with friends that had smaller magnets, like the first few I showed you guys, and they weren't finding anything. They would continue to throw and throw. My buddy was throwing for 10 to 15 minutes in one spot, didn't find a single thing. I come over with mine, every single throw, I'm pulling out all the objects that he was hoping to find. So that's the last style magnet, and I highly recommend this. If you were looking to begin magnet fishing at 3,800 pounds, it can be a little bit heavy if you've never magnet fished before. I would recommend the Artemis from Kratos Magnetics. If you guys go to my YouTube channel, any of my videos in the description will have links to all of the magnets that I recommend that are the best for beginners, as well as people that have done it before. The next part of my tools is going to be this rope here. So we use climbing ropes. This isn't just your everyday rope from the store or the hardware store. This is rated for twice the weight of this. So this rope here is rated for 7,000 pounds. The reason that we do that is because if you get your magnet stuck, you're going to have to utilize a come-along or hook it up to a vehicle to get your magnet back. If you don't have a strong rope, as soon as you start tugging on that rope to get your magnet, the rope is going to snap. And it doesn't feel good. It's happened to me twice now. One time it actually hit me. So I be very careful if that happens. The next main tool that I'll talk about is this. Does anyone know what this is? Come-along. So this is a come-along that is rated for 5 ton. It's rated to pull in 10,000 pounds. The reason that I use this, use it frequently, is because there's a lot of areas where magnet fishing is going to be close to a seawall. You're going to be close to areas that have a lot of boulders in the river, and you can get stuck very easily, as well as up underneath bridges like we were talking about earlier. This is one of the most vital tools. The other day we were in Battle Creek doing some magnet fishing, my girlfriend Sonia and I, and she had gotten her magnet stuck in between 2 boulders. So her rope went down between the crack, and when she pulled in, it got completely wedged there. Now we'll go into a few methods here in a little bit on how you can remove that, but a come-along is going to be your best friend when it comes to getting that stuff out of the water and getting your magnet back. If your magnet is on a seawall, this here is one of the best tools to pry off your magnet. A pry bar is one of the top things you need other than your come-along and your magnet gear. Now, I recommend getting one that's got a hook on the end, simply because if you're on a seawall, it's easier to get down underneath and pry out on it, and this will lift right up into this. I normally will hook it right up into here, and you get a good grip on it that way, you're able to pry it up off of the seawall. If you don't know what a seawall is, it is a giant sheet of metal that lines, if you look at any of the walkways in Detroit or most local cities, it's metal that goes up along the side that helps prevent corrosion. That's going to help the land not disappear from water hitting it all the time. So this is highly recommended. My next tool. So some of the dangers when it comes to magnet fishing is getting prodded and poked by rusty metal. I have updated my tetanus shot. If you have not, before you go magnet fishing, it might be a good idea to have a tetanus shot. You are going to be around a lot of rusty metal. Now I have 2 types of gloves here. This is the summer version of the gloves that we use. They've got a really thick rubber on the bottom here that's going to prevent you from getting stabbed. I've been stabbed way too many times by rusty metal, and it'll literally break off in your hands, and you got to pull out tweezers. It's not fun. But if you're magnet fishing, you need a good pair of gloves. I've used cheap gloves, gardening gloves. They work fine all the way up to these, which came from the actual magnet fishing company. And I find that they all work about the same. So you don't really have to go out there and spend a lot of money to get a pair of gloves that's going to work well for you. The second style is this here, waterproof winter fishing glove. So not everybody is crazy like me. I enjoy playing in the water when it's still snowing outside. And these are the best glove that I have found that is for keeping your hands warm. They're rated for up to -18 degrees, and they do keep your hands fairly dry and warm the entire time. They're from a company called G&F, and they can be purchased on Amazon. Most of the stuff that I utilize comes straight from Amazon. While the magnets and stuff come from an actual company, you can get all the side gear that you need right online. The next part is a bucket. Any bucket will work. 5-gallon bucket is typically what we'll use. I've seen people use smaller as well. The reason that we utilize these buckets is for storage, and it's easy to carry around. If you look in here, I have my magnet in this bucket. And on this end, I have the opposite side of my rope. So whenever we get to bridges, it's very important that we secure these ropes to whatever we are fishing at, because there's been instances where we've thrown magnets and they weren't tied off, and the next thing you know, your whole rope and your magnet is in the river. So by leaving this little tail, when I get there, I'm able to wrap it around the pole. Right when I get there, I can take my magnet and throw it, and it'll uncoil itself. I don't have to worry about taking everything out. I've utilized many different objects. I've had wire rollers, I've used hose rollers. The bucket is by far the best way to store your magnet, and it makes it easier to just carry around. We always carry 3 to 4 or 5-gallon buckets with us because they also work really well for putting all of your scrap metal into them. So when it comes to the scrap metal, a lot of people in the magnet fishing community all around the country have been kind of giving us a bad name. People are leaving their debris and their trash at all of the bridges where they're fishing, and it's becoming an issue in a lot of cities. I live in Lansing, and we have had a ton of people complain that all of the bridges in Lansing are covered with rust and rusty metal, and everybody thinks it's us. But really, the hobby is growing exponentially every single day. There's new people trying this hobby. If we don't continue to take care of the things that we are finding and actually put them in the proper receptacles, a lot of these cities are going to start to outlaw magnet fishing because they don't want people leaving trash all over the place. And that's going to lead me to, how do you dispose of the things that you find? So I would say about 98% of the things you're going to pull out of the river are trash. You're not going to want to take them home. It takes a long time to find good things. When you guys are watching any video on YouTube, yes, it's a 10-minute video, and it might seem like things happen fast, and that was the whole story of their day. But they were really out there from anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to get enough finds to make it seem like it was easy. So a lot of the stuff is going to be trash. Now, I highly recommend getting a pull-behind cart to put your metal in, to pull away from the area where you are fishing at. I find that's one of the best ways. We put all of our trash in trash cans, dumpsters, and sometimes we'll take it to the scrapyard. There was a time where there was a group of 10 of us in Grand Rapids magnet fishing, and we had saved up enough of the scrap metal in about 3 hours to go get 8 pizzas to feed everybody. So it can be profitable as well if you take it to the scrapyard. The prices are always fluctuating, so sometimes it's not really worth it, but currently the price is good. The last tool that I utilize out on the river is this here grappling hook. So not everything is going to be super magnetic that you're finding in the river. You're going to be finding a lot of trash. For instance, we talked about electric scooters a little bit ago. A huge problem with these electric scooter rental companies is 9 out of 10 times they're going to end up in a river in the city that they're being used in. They're not very magnetic, so it's really hard to grab onto them. You can get your magnet wedged up in the brakes or anywhere on the handlebars where it is a little bit more magnetic. But this right here, we hook them up to our rope with our magnet on the rope. I'm going to demonstrate that quick. And the reason we do that is it makes it really easy to grab the non-magnetic items that are located out there. This is one of my favorite tricks because the grappling hook itself is not very heavy. So when you throw it, it's hard to get the distance that you want. So I like to add it right here and add it right to my magnet when I'm throwing. I won't use this unless I have been fishing in an area long enough to know that there's no rocks and there's nothing huge that I'm going to get stuck on. This will grab onto just about everything. So if there's a rock, you're going to get wedged underneath. But by having these together, you get that extra weight and it makes it so much easier to toss it out. And when you're pulling it back in, if you do find something that is partially magnetic or not magnetic, it'll grab onto the metal that you're looking for, as well as the non-magnetic items that are in the river. The second style of claw looks just like this. These are a little bit more dangerous, and you need to be careful with these. They have super sharp points. We have a friend named Bryce from down in South Carolina who was magnet fishing, and he stepped on top of one of these hooks while he was fishing. It went all the way through the bottom of his foot, and he had to go to the hospital and have his surgically removed from his foot. So you need to be very careful. These do come with covers, little rubber covers that go over them. They're very easy to lose. As you can see, I've lost all 3 of them. But this will come in handy. Now, this you don't want to utilize when you're in areas that have a lot of woods or trees that are in the water, because this will pull right into a log, and it's very difficult to get it out of the log. But that is the second style of claw that we use. So the next big thing, how many of you guys think there's some good access areas in here in Mount Pleasant to the river? There are so many parks all around the Mount Pleasant area in particular. For instance, we got this map here. There's a huge stretch of parks all the way through. And you can see on this little map that there's a whole 7 parks right here. Anywhere where you can get down by the water is a good spot to magnet fish. It doesn't have to be off of a bridge. It doesn't have to be from the shore. Any single spot where you can access that waterway is going to be good. Now there are some techniques to finding things that are going to make it a little bit easier. The main thing that I utilize is Google Maps. So Google Maps, I'm able to go into any of the major cities that I want to look at, and I can pull up and see exactly where the river is. From there, I like to zoom in, and I can look for docks, bridges, any place that looks like a good spot, and I can mark them and save them in my phone. Now, after I've picked a city in a couple different spots, one of the things that I do next is I utilize crime maps. So every city has a thing called a crime map. What a crime map is going to tell you is it's going to show you a red, orange, and green area. The green areas are safer, the red are the more dangerous. When it comes to magnet fishing, the redder the area, the more likely it is that you will find trash and debris in the rivers. We find a lot of stuff in Saginaw, Flint, Detroit, and a lot of these areas have a higher red amount on their maps, opposed to places like Lansing, where I live. There's not as much of these red areas, and we don't find as much. When it comes to that too, bridges and shores, so there's a little bit of a difference. It's going to depend on your type of magnet. Who can tell me what type of magnet I said was best for fishing off of bridges? You know it?
Wasn't it the one side? Where
Yes, it was the single-sided magnet. So that is going to be the best thing you can have for fishing bridges. So based on what your equipment is, you can kind of use that to find the better spots. The double-sided magnet, what was that used for? Yep. So that's best utilized in pretty much any scenario, but off of bridges is one of the best for utilizing that double. So anywhere like that will be good for looking for stuff in the rivers. Now we talked a little bit about getting magnets stuck and unstuck, utilizing this here come along, but there's also other ways that you should approach it first. This is a last resort. I'll never leave a magnet behind, or at least I'll try never to leave a magnet behind. And it does happen occasionally. The first thing you want to do is assess what are you stuck on. Is it a rock? Is it a seawall? And my very first thing that I do from there is I'm going to walk left, and I'm going to pull from the main spot, and I'm going to pull this way. Because if it is wedged in between 2 rocks, typically your magnet will roll out and you'll get it unwedged from that spot. If that doesn't work, you'll head all the way to the other side and pull from that direction. If you're lucky, there might be somebody with a boat out there if you're on a big river, or if someone's in a kayak or a canoe, that'll help as well, because they can pull from the opposite direction for you. The only other thing you're really going to get stuck on is seawalls, like I talked about, and you just need to be careful that you're looking for these before you start throwing your magnet in those areas. If you've never magnet fished, I highly recommend not going to anywhere where there's a seawall or a lot of rocks. And you can usually tell from the images in Google Maps. Strong currents. So the current plays a lot into how we use our magnets. If there's not a strong current, you can pretty much throw your magnet anywhere in the river and not have any issues. Down in Detroit, we fish on the Detroit River quite a bit, and the current is massive compared to, let's say, the Grand River in Lansing, where I normally fish. When you have a massive current like that, by the time, if I threw my magnet straight out, by the time it hits the bottom, it's going to be 30 to 40 feet that way, because the current has pulled it all the way through. And at that point, I'm just going to be dragging it on the same line every time. So when there's a really strong current, you want to throw it upriver as far over as you can, because by the time it drops, it's going to be near where you are at. Now, another part of that with the currents is you want to walk with the current if it's really strong. So I will throw my magnet up current, I'll come over here, and as soon as it hits, I will pull, but I am walking with my magnet as I'm pulling. What this is going to do, it's going to keep the magnet on the bottom of the river because you're pulling across the current. If you were to just pull from over here and you're pulling, you're going to feel your magnet coming up off of the bottom, and it's just going to go with the current. So whenever you're fishing these strong currents, you need to make sure you're throwing on ankles. The next thing I want to talk about are police interactions and the police. So it's not every day that you go out and you'll find a gun in the river. Even after years and years of experience looking for places, it doesn't happen as often as people might think based off of the videos they see. But when it does happen, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind. The very first thing is you need to treat that firearm like it is loaded. You have no idea if it is loaded or if it's not loaded. It could be completely rusty and be a paperweight at that point. Always treat it like it's loaded. The next step is if the gun is newer, anything pre-1960s, 70s that looks like it could still function, you need to call the police. That's one of the very first things that we will do when finding these things. The reason is, I don't want to take home a potential murder weapon or a weapon that was used in a crime, and then with my luck, I'll get pulled over on the way home, or something will happen at my home, and the next thing, I am being charged for the crime that was committed. So that's why we always call the police when we find guns. The ones that we don't call on are anything super old and rusty that are missing most of the parts. This will never function again. It's missing all of the inside part. Anything this old is okay to keep, but you need to make a judgment call whether you think it can still function or not. If it's functionable, I would call the police about it. Now, we've had some issues in the past where I've had friends who have been, when they interact with the police seem very angry, or they're not happy that they're coming to take care of this situation. I find that it's what you give is what you will get back. If you're kind and friendly, the police are going to be kind and friendly. Me personally, I've never had any issue with the police when I find guns or I turn guns in. I've always been respectful, and they've been respectful like that. But you might get somebody who's having a bad day, and they might not be as nice about it. Just let them go about their day and try to avoid the situation as best as possible. We talked about metal disposal. The next thing that I want to talk about is using carts. So if you guys ever seen the little wagons that people use for like taking kids to the beach or anything like that, up until last year, I didn't see anybody using these in the magnet fishing community. Nobody. We started using them about a year and a half ago, and I find that it is the best way to get from point A to point B. Now, when we're looking for spots, we're trying to find spots that have parking spots next to them so we can at least be close to the vehicles and we don't have to walk very far. But in these bigger cities like Detroit and Flint, there's not as many parking spots near their bridges. So the cart makes it so we can travel. If we have to walk a half a mile down the road to get to a bridge, it makes it a whole lot easier to do so. I'm going to go over some of my favorite finds next. I'm going to take a pause though to see if anybody has any questions about the equipment.
I got no questions.
I'm here to answer them all.
3,800-pound magnet, have you ever accidentally sat next to it? You go show your credit cards?
So I have never had it ruin any of my credit cards or electronics, but it can and it will if you were too close. Electronics today are a little bit different. TVs back in the day, if you were to take a magnet to the screen, they would turn different colors. We don't really have that issue anymore because the technology is advanced. So memory is an issue when it comes to SD cards and things like that nature that are in your phones. If you get this magnet too close to your phone for too long, it'll wipe all the memory off of your phone together. So you want to make sure you keep that away from any of your electronics.
Go ahead.
Yes?
Have you ever found electronics or phones when you were magnet fishing?
Yeah, we actually find quite a bit of phones. She found an iPod a couple weeks ago, one of the original iPods that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Antique.
Yep. You had a question?
That small double-sided one, the first double-sided one you showed us, how much could that be?
So those are anywhere from $35 to $50 depending on the company. A lot of people in the community, if you don't buy a magnet with my code, that's fine. Everyone in the community, for the most part on YouTube, has a discount code. And I would recommend going into their descriptions, and they'll all have codes to get 10 to 15% cheaper on their magnets.
I was curious, are you aware of yourself or anyone recovering a gun that actually solved a crime?
Yes. So it doesn't happen often. I've only ever had guns come back stolen. We do have a buddy from the Grand Rapids area that did find a gun. It was a AR-15, I believe it was, and it came back tied to a double homicide. So they were able to. I don't know if they solved the crime from it, but they were able to get the weapon that was used in the crime to help solve the crime.
It would seem obvious to me that if it's in the river, there was something bad done with that weapon.
You would think.
Throw that in there, but
You would think. Criminals don't think very hard, so they're not the brightest. We were fishing one time, and my buddy Jason had found a gun in the river, and the police were able to actually locate the owner of the gun. And they called the guy, and he said, "Oh, I just wanted to get rid of it. I was done with it." And he threw it into the river right next to the police station. So people do weird things to get rid of their guns. Yes.
A while ago, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I see people filling up safes. Have you ever done that?
We have. So safes actually are not super magnetic, and that is a time where we utilize our claws quite frequently. We were fishing in the Detroit area. We had a cleanup event that we had hosted, and my buddy Jason, once again, had found a safe that was about this tall by this wide. It took 8 or 9 of us to get it in with using hooks and stuff. Unfortunately, it was already open, and there wasn't a whole lot in it. There was a flower from someone's wedding, and that was about it. I do know of a guy over in the UK, he found a safe. When they opened it up, it had, I believe it was around $2,000 in cash inside of the safe. And they found the owner of the safe and returned all the money to the guy that had the safe stolen. So people do find safes quite frequently. Always are empty though.
I had a friend that was a bail bondsman, and for a while there was a group in the Flint area. They were all weightlifters, and the thing was to see who could steal the biggest safe.
I want to know where they were dumping them. Sounds like some good guys to know. Yes.
Besides trash, what is the most common thing that you find?
So the most common thing you're going to find is this right here. Railroad spikes. Pretty much every bridge, every waterway that I have been to, I pull at least 1 or 2 railroad spikes out of. And there's been times where I've pulled 20 or 30 in a single day. There's a lot of cool things you can do with these too. I plan on making a bunch of knives this coming year. Put them in a forge, you can hammer them out. I worked in a sheet metal fabrication shop when I was in the military, so that's what I plan on doing with these. I got a couple hundred of these at the house I'm looking to transform over. One of the other most common things are things like fishing lures. We find a whole lot of fishing lures and fishing line. I'd say we've pulled at least 5 to 10 miles worth of fishing line out over the last 3 years. It'll come in big bundles. You'll get a big snag out of the river, and the fishermen love it because we'll pull them out and we'll offer all of the sinkers and all the fishing lures to any of the guys around us that want it. And it kind of like eases things over. Sometimes fishermen are not the happiest when you're magnet fishing next to them. They think you're going to scare the fish away. It's actually not true. Surprisingly, with a magnet, in my experience, I've noticed that the fish are attracted to coming up to my rope and coming up to my magnet, which led me to do some research. And the fish actually, there's something in them that likes the magnetivity of a magnet. So it actually brings in more fish to that area. Yes?
Wait, so I fish a lot, and I like fishing. Could I just chuck a magnet in the river and start fishing there?
You could. Anywhere you can fish, you can magnet fish. She caught a fishing pole back there one day, and the person next to her was fishing, and she gave her some bait. She cast it out as a kid's rod. Within 1 minute, she had a fish on the end of it, and she reeled it in. So you can find fish with a magnet. Yes?
Have you ever found really expensive jewelry?
Not any jewelry. So there's a thing called ferrous and non-ferrous when it comes to metal. It means that one has iron and one doesn't have any iron. Most jewelry, or at least expensive jewelry that's worth money, has no iron in it, so you're not going to be able to grab that with a magnet. Things like gold and silver aren't magnetic. We have found jewelry, but none that was worth any money. Metal detecting, that's another story. Yes?
So like, scrap metal, how much, like, money could you get off? Is it just like not much or?
It isn't a whole lot. It depends on how much you have and what the prices are. The prices fluctuate and they change with the economy. So depending on what the price of metal is at the time, you can get a little bit more. The day that we got 8 pizzas, we had pulled in around 12 to 1,300 pounds worth of metal, and we got maybe 50, 60 bucks to go buy pizzas with. It really just depends on the time of year.
What do you recommend for the length of the rope?
So when I first started fishing, I was using a 65-foot rope, and at first I thought this is great. But after fishing for a few years, I quickly realized that I needed more rope because we were fishing from higher spots, we were fishing from deeper waters. I would recommend a 100-foot of rope minimum just to get started. I've got friends who will use more, but I think that's unnecessary. I think about 100 foot would be your best bet for how much rope to use.
When you run into a non-ferrous metal like the safe, can you feel that through the line? How do you know to put a grappling hook on there to say there's something there but I can't?
So you can feel it. Safes aren't very magnetic, but it will stick to it. You will feel it click as soon as it hits it. But when you pull, you'll feel it dragging and it'll be flat. So that'll let you know there's something there. And then at that point, we would take and use our claws to pull in. But yeah, safes are, in particular, they're just magnetic enough to let me know that it's there. Now, when you're looking for other things with the rope, when you're throwing your magnet in the river and pulling it back, you can feel the bottom of the river almost like you had your hands down there and you're rubbing your fingers over to find anything. As soon as that magnet's bumping over a rock, it's bumping over anything, you can feel it right in the rope through the vibrations. So it makes it a little bit easier to decide where the stuff's at.
You ever had your scuba girlfriend jump in to collect something that you couldn't get?
So not yet. She does scuba dive. She's a master scuba diver. We haven't. There's not a whole lot of spots where we go that we are safe for diving. We go over to the Hudson in New York, and I would never dive there. The currents are too strong. The Detroit River, I would never dive over there. I do know people that do go to scuba dive and look for things that we find metal detecting and magnet fishing. Well, they'll go underneath, and they've got their own separate SCBA setup or scuba setup, where it stays at the top of the water and they can go down under it. It's pumping them oxygen the whole time. They find a lot of cool stuff that way. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go over some of my favorite finds. I'm going to ask Scuba Sonia over here to come up so I can show off my favorite, and that's going to be this sign down here. I'm going to flip the lights off for a quick second. Yeah. I found this sign in the year 2020 when I first started magnet fishing. I didn't have a super strong magnet, and it took me over 2 weeks to pull this out of the water because my magnet was not strong enough. Now, I did some research, and I was able to find that this came from the bridge that was there in the 30s, and the bridge was torn down in the 1950s. I was able to find an original photo with the sign next to the bridge that doesn't exist anymore. Yes?
Why did the bridge get
It's just, I'm not sure. I wasn't around. I think it had something to do with the structural stuff. It was breaking. Yeah. But the crazy part about this sign is it utilizes uranium glass as the reflectors. So if you put a black light up to it, it will glow. Uranium glass was used a lot in the 1950s and 60s for glasses and plates. And if you go to thrift shops or anything like that, there's a good chance that you can find your own uranium glass at thrift stores. So sometimes when we'll go to Goodwill or anywhere like that, we'll bring a little black light with us, see if we can find any uranium glass. Now, it's uranium, which is radioactive. It's not radioactive enough to where it's going to do anything that's going to harm you. I wouldn't go put it under my pillow, but you should be okay to have it inside of the house. But that is by far my favorite.
That's pretty cool.
One of the other things that I really like finding a lot is old tools, especially tools that I can tie back to different things that were going on at the time. So in the late 70s and 80s, a lot of the logging was happening over in the northeast part of the country. So eventually they were running out of spots to take the lumber down so they could make boards. And they started moving over to Michigan. And where they headed was up by Saginaw. Up in the Saginaw area, up in the Tittabawassee River, we find a lot of old tools that can be tied back. This one's not as old as it has duct tape on it. It might be, but for instance, they call it a cant hook.
and this is for pulling in logs. And this was found in Saginaw, Michigan. I find that in Saginaw, we find a lot, that's where we find the most tools and older stuff. This was also found in Saginaw, Michigan, an old pickaxe. For some reason, just I love finding these old tools. I get so excited. I get more excited about some of these tools, like this pickaxe, than I do the guns. And it wasn't always that way. Another really cool find, let's see, this was my first gun that I ever found. And I found this in Saginaw. It's a Winchester 22. I thought that was really cool. I always wanted to take it and refurbish everything on it. But once I started cleaning it up, I quickly realized that that was probably not going to happen. There are many different ways you can clean your finds. I recommend using white vinegar just to start. We'll do a 24-hour white vinegar bath and let that just work its way through. We'll take a soft metal brush, so we'll use brass or copper to scrub onto it. That way we're not scratching any of these finds. This is one of the more unusual finds that I've found. This is the lower receiver to an AR-15, and what makes this unusual is there were only 318 of these that were produced that had iron in them. The rest were all aluminum. And this was this was the 13th one out of the batch of 380. When I pulled this up, I thought it was a fake because it shouldn't have been magnetic, but it was. This here is a pin from the Buick Company in Flint, Michigan from the 1920s. What this was an employee badge, and they had to wear these throughout the factory while they were working. We found this in Flint. I love finding anything that has, where I can tie it back to a story or a place. And this is one of my favorite ones that does that.
If they had the record of whose bags that
I would be willing to bet that if I dug deep enough, somebody would have it.
Got a clip on the back, that clip on your shirt?
Yep, it's got a little pin on the back, pin right to your shirt. We found some similar things to this metal detecting. She found a silver World War II pin from the GM company in Lansing. During the war, they stopped creating vehicles, they switched over to helping with the war effort. So they were creating weaponry and different types of machinery that way. And they all had to wear these silver pins, every employee that was working during that time. We found one of those in almost mint condition not too long ago. So anything that's got a date or I can tie back to some time, that's the way to go. We find a lot of old horseshoes. I know you asked about some of the more common things. I find a horseshoe almost every time I go out magnet fishing. All these old waterways, before there were buildings and bridges everywhere, they were just open areas where there was towns where people were riding their horses through the water. So we find a lot of horseshoes in areas like that. Another thing we find a lot of is bullets. These are normally not magnetic. Some of the rifle rounds will be. And I've had a lot of people tell me that bullets are not magnetic. Well, there's no way. And they'll tell me that I'm faking my video. Just to show you guys, it is magnetic. Now, some of the finds that we have found are a little bit, they do contain value. Most of the stuff you find is going to be junk, but occasionally you'll get lucky and you'll find stuff like these license plates from 1913. We've actually found 6 of this one in Lansing, and we've had offers for $750 a piece for these right off the bat. I recently found one from 1912, so now we've got a 1912, a 1913, and a 1914. And what's really cool about these old license plates is in 1910 is when Michigan started issuing out actual license plates. Prior to 1910, you could have your own license plate however you wanted it, as long as the numbers were correct and tied to you. In 1910, they started issuing these, and they were porcelain. So the front, where you're seeing the green, this is all porcelain that has been mounted onto a piece of metal, essentially. From 1910 to 1916 is when they were making these license plates, and after that is when they switched over to the metal style one. So these are like my favorite thing ever to find. Any old porcelain sign in general, it's going to have a little bit of value to it, even in a bad condition. This one, even in real terrible condition, I could still probably get $30, $40. Now, these are some of my, this is a postal telegraph sign. Can anyone guess what type of vehicle this would have been on? It was on a bicycle. So in the early 1900s, they had the Postal Telegraph Company, who was later bought by Western Union,
And the Postal Telegraph Company, they used high school boys would deliver all the telegraphs. And these would be mounted to the bottom of their bike underneath where the bar where they sit is. So that way you can dictate who was one of the postal boys. So I thought that was really cool.
Two-sided or one-sided?
So it is two-sided.
Okay.
This side shows the words a little bit better. This side still has the blue intact a little bit. And it's funny, the week that I found this, I was flying out to New Jersey and I'm at the airport and they have a whole Postal Telegraph section of this restaurant and they had one of these signs in it. And I was like, no way did I just find that, and I'm stumbling across it at the airport.
Where did you find that?
These were both found in Lansing, down by the Capitol. This is a Western Union one. So this is the company that bought it out, and I found it ironic that years later, after this one had been thrown in the river, another person from Western Union had thrown one in the same exact spot. I thought that was funny.
And no bicycles attached then.
Not attached. I did find 2 separate bicycles at that area that did seem old, but at the time it didn't click in my head that that's what that would have been, and they both ended up in a dumpster. Yeah, there's been times where I've found really cool things like old iron working tools that I didn't know what they were at the time, and I just tossed them. And then I go back and I'm watching videos and I'll get comments and people are like, oh, well that's this. And I'm just like, why did I get rid of that? So now we kind of, unless we know exactly what it is, we usually won't get rid of it. If it looks like it could be something, we'll do the research right then and there to see what it is so we're not throwing it away, because that has happened quite a few times. Now, if you guys do like magnet fishing, there's also other hobbies that are very similar to it. How many people have heard of metal detecting? Almost everybody, perfect. So metal detecting is another hobby that goes hand in hand with magnet fishing. And the communities all talk too, so we're all friends for the most part. Another hobby is called mudlarking. We really like a thing called mudlarking. So we will go and we'll throw waders on and we will walk the edge of the rivers and we'll get down in the river and we'll just look for things. The other day we were mudlarking in Lansing and we came across a magazine full of hollow points. We also found an old porcelain sign that would measure the amount of water in the river. So you can find a lot of, yeah, those are worth money, anything porcelain. And you can find a lot of that up along the riverways. And that's
We've
mudlarking.
also found actual money.
The one day, within 5 minutes, I found a $20 bill right on the edge of the river. And about 10 minutes later, she found a $10 bill on the edge of the river. So you can find some money out there as well. Another hobby that we like to do is called bottle digging. Essentially, we will look at maps, we will look at old newspapers, and we'll see where the trash was being dumped. So prior to the 1940s, maybe 1950s, we didn't have a waste management service that was coming to your house and removing all of the trash. We threw them in pits in the back of the yards, down by the rivers, and we burned them. So we will go and look for areas where trash was thrown, and we will go and start digging there. Once you start digging, you'll start pulling out bottles from way back when. Recently, we were doing some digging over in New York, and she had found a bitters bottle, a little medicine bottle from the 1850s. That you never know what you're going to find in these old dumps. And we use newspapers because they won't exactly tell you exactly where the trash is being dumped. But Betsy next door complained about a foul smell coming downwind from this location. It's like, okay, well there might have been a dump there. Let's go look. And that's kind of how we go and find spots when it comes to looking for bottles. Some of those bottles can be pretty valuable too. Our favorite spot to go is called Dead Horse Bay in Brooklyn, New York. Essentially, it was a dump up until the 1960s, right on the ocean, right up against the ocean. Every day, the ocean will come in with the tide, and then it'll wipe out, boom, all new trash every single day. We'll find all kinds of bottles there. We really like anything that's cobalt blue. That's like our favorite glass. We also like looking for beach glass. Over in Northern California, we'll go up to Monterey and a lot of their beaches where all this old glass is being thrown into the rivers and into the ocean. It gets tumbled so much that it comes back looking like a polished rock, almost like a haze to it. So we collect that too. I love it. Any of these hobbies all go hand in hand with magnet fishing. It's treasure hunting. And you guys are all part of the treasure hunting community now because you've been here and you've learned about it. Does anybody have any other questions? Yes. So this little boat, I was in Detroit magnet fishing, and they were in the process of tearing down a dock. So where the boats used to park, they were removing that, so no one could park there anymore. And I found this in the river, and I don't know if it is or not, but
It looks very similar to a boat that used to dock and that it was its main docking spot. And I'm thinking this was the miniature version of the ship that they had. But I've never seen a toy boat that was all metal before. This was the first one I'd ever seen, and I thought that was really cool. That same day I found this can, Royal Crown Cola from the 1950s, and it was in one of the best shaped cans I've ever pulled out of the river. Normally you wouldn't be able to read any of this stuff on them. This one you can completely see what it says. It was drink. Yes, you do. So that's going to be all for talking. I invite you. Do you have a question?
Have you ever got two of your big magnets right stuck together? You can't get them apart?
Like that? So when that happens, we will take one rope, connect it to one side, another rope on the other. You tie one around a post or something solid like a tree. Then everyone else will go to the other side and you will pull as hard as you can. Sometimes it doesn't work. If that doesn't work, you can use the come along to pull them apart, hook one up to a tree and pull from the other side. You can take a wedge. I've used railroad spikes that wedge pretty well in between the magnets. You can hammer them in and you can pull them apart a little bit easier there. It can be a pain. And that's another thing that people with me too is be careful when you're handling these magnets around metal. They will snap as soon as it gets close to something. For instance, let me use this bigger one.
And be careful standing next to others with a magnet in their hand.
This. So for instance, if I take this, that's not even a strong magnet, this side is. It clips right up to it. These clamp magnets can typically pull through mud and pull stuff up from like anywhere from 4 to 8 inches underneath. The 360 magnets you can get way deeper with, all the way up to like 12 inches underneath. We also find that fishing in a one spot for a long time, you can find nothing for 2 or 3 hours, but you're working on all of that crap at the bottom and it's pulling up all kinds of new metal at the bottom there. We fished at the spot in Detroit. We thought it was completely done. We'd been there probably 20 times. Well, we invited probably 25 of us to come for a cleanup event. And sure enough, after about an hour, all these old guns started coming out of the river from the early 1900s and late 1890s. Yeah, so the more you fish in one spot, the more it's going to come up too.
I want to quick ask them a question.
No, you can ask many questions.
They're dragging a river for something, looking for something. Do they use magnets or do they use just hooks?
You said the police?
Yeah.
So
something happened and they knew someone threw something in. They do magnet fishing? Or?
So most major cities do have a department that goes and searches rivers for things. They'll typically have a dive team. Most of these dive teams will have at least 1 or 2 magnets in their arsenal, just in case. A lot of the times I've seen them being used to, let's say they found a vehicle in the water, they need to mark where it's at. They will use a magnet to hook it to the car on a buoy so that they can relocate that car and they don't lose where that's at. Yeah, most cops groups will at least have one. There's been instances when we've been out magnet fishing and had to call the police, where the police actually want to throw the magnet with us for a little bit. They always have a really good time doing that. Any other questions? Yes. I found part 2 of guitar one time, but that was the only instrument I ever found. I'm gonna let Andrew, I'm so sorry. Andrew, come up and talk a little bit more about this, and then I'm going to invite you guys all up to come up and look at these finds. All I ask is please do not touch the metal finds. Over here, there's a ton of stickers. Feel free to take as many as you would like. I've got more in my backpack if you need more. Yeah, turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Tanner. This was really enlightening. One of the things we wanted to tie in with this event is the fact that here we have this beautiful watershed, the Chippewa River, in our own community, and Chippewa Watershed Conservancy has provided some information about our local system. There's some maps here of the river, and we're also giving away this book. So I know I had a couple people come in a little bit late. If you want to put your names on a piece of paper here and put it in here, we're going to draw and give away 2 of these books. They're called Chippewa. It's Connecting with the Land, Connecting with the Land. And it's all about the Chippewa Watershed Conservancy and some of their preserves and different things in the community. So, did you get your name then? Okay, come on up and go ahead and do that. Yep, just sign a piece of paper, just put your name in here. And then, I guess I just wanted to say, you think about how all of this trash is in our water, and you want to get it out, We want to clean up our waterways. And like you said, some of the fishermen might not like that because they think it's, you're messing around with nature there and messing up with your fishing. But ultimately, it's better for us to clean that up than to, and near like the bridges and stuff, you think about like the habitat and ecosystem of the river right there, and disturbing that. But when it's in the area that's so heavily populated, it's probably better to get it out than to worry about disturbing nature a little bit along the river there. So I encourage everyone to go out and magnet fish.
The main thing with that too is things like batteries. Those are leaching out into the waterways, and it's terrible for the fish, it's terrible for anyone living in that wildlife.
Right.
So that's like one of our main things we want to pull out. While pulling all this metal out necessarily isn't making a huge impact on cleaning things up because it can take habitats from them, we do find a lot of things that have plastics and other things like that are getting into the waterways, which can leach into our food system. So making sure we get all those out of the water really is helpful.
Has anybody ever contacted or thought about asking scooter companies? I believe that they send a beacon every periodically, 5 minutes or something, for their location so they can be picked up to charge. When that disappears, they must have that located somewhere, maybe near a river where they've thrown them in the river. Anybody ever thought of asking them, could you just give us that data so we could go start?
I think that is something that you definitely should go talk to the city about.
Okay.
I really do. It is a concern. I know that Lansing is having this huge problem right now with one of the scooter companies. And, they've taken, you guys took out how many scooters?
We pulled out 11 in one day, and then we had friends come back to the same spot. They pulled out another 125 from the same exact spot in one day.
And this is on the Red Cedar?
Yeah, this is right there on Michigan State's campus.
Yeah. So, if that's definitely a concern of yours in in that particular scooter company, then I think you definitely want to talk to the city about that and make sure that that's a concern.
That's a major hit to the river.
I would think so too. I would think so too. Okay, first winner. Dan. Dan Martin.
Congrats.
I'm gonna pull one more. All right, it's gonna be the winner. One folded this time. Julie. All right. If you guys have any other questions, absolutely ask Tanner, and you're welcome to come up and browse. Make sure you take some stuff from
I'm gonna use that little anvil to hammer all these.
I should, right? It's funny, so all these little tools, there's a lot of different black magic type of stuff, or voodoo, they're doing witchcraft, and we find a lot of, that's where this cauldron is from. It had all of these little tools, there's something different rosaries with those are things we'll share with us. Yeah, we find a lot of these little tools, it's kind of just wow. And cauldrons, like I've known at least 4 separate people that have found cauldrons around the country and are full of all of these different portions. Found a voodoo doll one day, and that was, and his hands tied and his legs are tied.
Probably gruesome, just like that.
I wouldn't doubt it. I found a frying pan one time, and it was in a plastic bag. We opened up the bag, and there was 2 other bags in there with hair, human hair, and they smelled terrible. And when we were looking through it, there's pieces of scalp connected to this hair. And we called the police, and the police came and threw it in the filter.
That wallet we found?
Yeah.
She responded.
We found a wallet in Meadow Creek this weekend, and it had her social security, everything you could ever need for your personal identification in it. She finally responded. We're gonna get that back to her.
That was magnetic somehow?
Yeah, the wallet that she had it in, I think the zipper on it caught it. At first I was like, I really hope this is gonna pull up. I really hope. And sure enough, it stuck right to it. It was only in 1.5 foot of water, but it was in a canal with cement walls on the sides, so you could have just gotten in there. She got real lucky. Yeah. Now you guys are free to come up and take a look at everything. I can explain anything if you have questions. I can give you more information.
What costs more, the magnets or the rope?
The magnets, granted, I do go through a lot of ropes. I think this is my 7th or 8th rope that I've used in the last 3 years. Yeah, yeah. The ropes are usually like 50 to 70 bucks, depending on what company you go through. The magnets, it's the same thing. I'm constantly replacing magnets. I get a lot of wear and tear on mine. We go out once a week, so yeah, they're easily broken. This is like, I think, my 5th 360-degree magnet, so that can add up really fast. Yeah. Want to see something? This magnet right here was found with one of her magnets. Sonia's on a streak. She's found 2 magnets in the past 2 weeks. When you get your magnet stuck, a lot of people will just cut their rope and just let it go. Never do that. Hop on Facebook, get in the Michigan Magnet page, and just ask, hey, is anyone in this area? 9 out of 10 times there's someone within 20, 30 minutes of where you're at. And most of us, we have no problem just hopping in the car and going to help you get your magnet back. Like, it happens a lot.
Especially to me.
Occasionally we'll leave one. We were in the Hudson fishing one day and we were using to come along and her rope snapped. And there's no way we're getting that magnet back. It's just so sad seeing a couple $100 just get left in the river. Yeah, exactly.
Come out with an extra arm.
Any other questions? Possibly. I'll have to get your info. We've been finding them quite frequently. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I was addicted after the first time out there. I started finding tools and fishing lures. And I love it. You guys need to go. You said you guys are going to get one for your...
Oh, no, I just said that'd be a great Christmas or birthday gift.
You guys should think about it. A lot of the libraries around the area, we were just down in Buchanan, and they've got a library of things.
I would totally suggest that to
Yeah.
our collectors.
Yeah, they're going to get 2 or 3 magnets, so you guys can come and check them out from the library and take them
Oh
out.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes, because that would not take up a lot of space on the
Yeah.
shelf. That'd be great.
Yep. I thought it was so cool. I was like, what? That because when I first started, I was like, oh man, I had to spend all this money to go try to do this, and I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. I thought I was just wasting my money. But having an opportunity to go check something out from someplace, it's nice. Yeah.
From like scrap metal and like rare stuff, how do you earn more money than Smith?
Not really. I haven't sold any of my finds, and I don't plan on ever really selling anything. We plan on doing a little at-home museum. Eventually, these will all be in display cases with QR codes. I want to be able to have my friends come over and take a picture of the code, and it'll link them right to the video of us pulling it out of the river. So if anything we have, they can see it getting pulled out in the video. But some things are worth money, like these license plates. Yes.
I saw you pulling a motorcycle off in one of your videos.
Yes.
What'd you do with that? Metal
So-
metal or?
So we were in Inkster. There was a group of 4 or 5 of us fishing, and we saw this motorcycle about probably 5 or 6 feet into the river. It wasn't super far out, so we decided to pull it up. We pulled it up. We called the cops because it had a VIN number on it still, or a VIN. And that way with the VIN you could see if it was stolen or what it was reported for. Then the police called the towing company in, and the towing company removed it from the area. But where we were at was down a long trail where their tow truck couldn't come through. So for the most part, there was probably 6 or 7 of us. We all dragged it all the way across this little walking bridge. The walking bridge, half of the planks were missing, and there's giant holes everywhere in it. So that once we finally got it to there, he hooked it up with the tow strap, and the tow truck guy just rammed it through there. If that bike had any chance of being restored, it does not anymore. He used it to move a log out of the way. We just kept pulling. And we never heard anything after that. Some of the times, we've got a couple friends that have found like golf carts and things like that, where they've actually kept them. Stuff like that, I have no space for it. So. Probably could have scrapped it though. All right, if there's no other questions, that's going to wrap up today's presentation. I really appreciate you guys all coming out. It was a blast. I'm going to have a few more of these talks throughout the state coming up. Keep tuned on my YouTube channel and the community page. You can see any new information. There will also be cleanup events posted there as well if you guys are looking to come help out with one of our cleanups. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to stick and help yourself. So this is the one that we might actually build up. He's got the Just give me out. I should get. You just blew my mind. I should get magnets like that. That makes way more sense. It's been 3 years, man, and you just changed my life. I appreciate that.
What was the suggestion? What was the suggestion?